believe in comparing yourself to others, but sometimes it's good to have a benchmark. No matter what age you are, everyone has dreams and goals, and so by the end of this episode, you'll know how much is saved for every single decade, and you can compare yourself to see if you're above or below average. Now, according to a retirement plan provider in the US, the rule of thumb is to save 10 times your income if you want to retire by the age of 67. It's not 65 anymore, we're living longer, so we're starting to push that out a little bit. Now, I would say this is not the easiest thing to do. 10 times your income saved by the time you're 67 is not something that you can get passively. So how much should you save per decade? Let's start with your 20s. In your 20s, you're probably still figuring out your life goals, you're figuring out who you are. And so the focus is to get good money habits in your little toolkit right now, even when you don't have a lot of money. I think in your 20s, there is a lot of pressure to get everything figured out. I blame the Forbes 30 Under 30s awards for kind of putting this pressure in that by 30, we have to achieve all these different things. And we need to know what career we want. We need to know who we want to be with for the rest of our life. We need to know what kind of person we are, what our hobbies are, what kind of education we want to take on. And it's overall quite overwhelming and not something that you have to have down straight away. So the savings goal for your 20s is to have 1 to 2 months of living costs saved. But if you want to get an A+, I would say 3 to 6 months of living costs saved. And according to the Federal Reserve's board in 2022, in America at least, the average balance of someone in their 20s is $20,000. And I feel like that's going to be skewed by people that are in their late 20s. Sometimes, sadly, some people in their 20s also have windfalls that they receive from grandparents. And so there's a number of different things that can contribute to the average balance. But I have met 20-year-olds with negative savings. I have met 20-year-olds with $500 saved. I've met 20-year-olds with $20,000 saved. The 20s is probably the hardest time to compare because we're no longer living on the same plane anymore. Some of us have a head start. Some of us have things that we're trying to get out of, like student loan debt. So if you have at least 1 to 2 months of living costs saved, you are doing well. And if you really, really, really want to get an A+++, if you are like a 5-star student that just is a little bit of a teacher's pet, what you can do are 2 things for me. One is opening up a retirement account to match your employer's contribution. And the second is just to start investing. By doing these 2 things, you're going to be setting yourself up for success. And this is a time when if you get a bonus, if you get a windfall, if you are American and someone hits you with their car and you get cash, this adds up. I was watching the show Vanderpump Rules, and one of the waitresses, Sheena Shea, who's a star of the show, this is real life. She got hit by a car and she got an insurance claim for it. And then she used that money to pay for her wedding, which was a beautiful, extravagant wedding. But when you're in your 20s, that $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 can really make a huge difference. So save that money, invest that money, do what you can to put that money away. Not to say that this was important, but the marriage didn't last. So it was kind of like a frustrating amount of money to have lost in that kind of way. But I digress. In your 20s, a little bit saved up. It's not the time to be stressing if you do not have a lot of money in your 20s. This is the time that you're going to be setting yourself up. So let's say you've achieved that. Let's say we're now thinking about our 30s. What does that look like and how much should you have saved? Now, when it comes to your 30s, life can start to look a little different. Your frontal lobe has developed, hopefully. Especially if you, like me, in your 20s have made some very, very, very stupid mistakes and just, it's a little bit of a messy decade, let's say. And so you might have certain life goals that you're starting to think about a little bit more. Maybe it's time to start saving up for a property. Maybe you'd like to buy your first home, especially if you live in a country like Australia or Canada or New Zealand, where property prices, the UK, I guess kind of like any large city, to be honest, where property prices are high. And it's no longer the expectation that you will have been able to buy a home in your 20s. But your 30s are probably the time where you might start thinking about something like that. Sometimes for some people, this might be the time when they think about starting a family. And along with that comes a lot of extra financial considerations. For one, you're going to be accounting for extra costs involved with having baby, looking after baby, and often a reduction in salary or a bit of stagnation or taking time off work. So there's extra things that you have to think about that you didn't have to in your 20s. I also feel like the 30s are when a lot of people start finding money or time to put into hobbies. Like, I don't know why, but as soon as I meet like women or men that reach 30, it's like they're going to get really into barbecuing. The men, or they're going to get really into gardening, or they're going to get really into like painting miniatures. Like, there's always something. I'm definitely starting to feel that way as well. The idea in your 30s is that you're starting to get a better idea of your values and what you want to spend your money on. And so the savings goal for your 30s is that you want to have an equivalent of your annual salary saved up or invested. I'll say that again. In your 30s, you want to have the equivalent of your annual salary saved up or invested. So if you make $50,000 a year, you should have $50,000 a year saved or invested, or a mixture of saved, invested in your retirement fund. And the average balance of someone in their 30s is about $41,000. Now remember, this includes people that are 31 to people that are 39. And if you really want to start thinking about taking your 30s to the next level, kind of getting an A+ in your 30s, if you may, then your 30s are probably the time to really start clearing out those bad debts if you haven't already. These sort of things include credit card loans that you haven't paid off. They include student loan debt that you're going to start chipping away at. It includes debt that you have high interest on, but this does not mean mortgage debt. This does not mean low interest rate student loan debt. This is not debt that you need to pay off quickly, like a car payment debt that's, under 3%. Not that those exist right now, but the idea is, you pay off the heavy bad debt. It's okay to keep the good debt. And you want to make sure that whatever your salary is in your 30s, you want to have that much saved up, either in cash, invested, or a mixture of cash invested in your retirement fund. I kind of prefer this way of doing it because if you think about it, like Sally might be making $100,000 a year and Sarah might be making $300,000 a year. Those are two very different people with two very different salaries. However, if I was to sit here and go, hey, everyone, like we should all save $100,000 or we should all save $50,000, like that's a lot easier for the person making $300K. She's going to be like, yeah, of course, easy. Whereas, for the person making $100,000 a year, that's half her salary. That's not easy to save up in comparison to someone that makes a lot of money. And so by kind of negotiating it down and saying, hey, as long as you are saving in alignment with your personal income level, then the person making $300K a year, she should be having $300,000 saved up or invested. Not $300,000 every year, but across her 30s. That is what she should be having. And the person making $100,000 a year should have about $100,000 saved up or invested. And so that way, regardless of where you are in terms of your income, you're kind of getting a good idea of how much you should be putting away. And it starts to feel a little bit less daunting when you actually have a number that you can aim for. And the idea behind it is, again, there's no point of giving like a blanket statement of like, put away this amount. It is all down to your income. And so as your income increases, you better make sure that those lifestyle creeps that start to kind of make their way into your life do not chip away at your money. Because as your income increases, as you get that next promotion, as you become manager, as you become a director, you're going to want to start dressing like one. You're going to want to start going to the expensive gym that all the other, high executive performing women go to. I don't know. I feel like you'll be like, oh my God, my handbag is not good enough. I need like my Kate Spade handbag is like so outdated and I need something else. No offense to Kate Spade. I personally love Kate Spade, but you get what I mean. The idea is you need to keep your expenses low, and that way you'll be able to save up at least a year of your salary. So you figure that out. You've got your 20s to kind of mess around. You're starting to get things right in your 30s. What should your money look like in your 40s? Now, in your 40s, you might be starting to feel maybe a little bit more comfortable in your own skin. You're going to hopefully know more of what you want. You've been putting up with less BS in your life. You've been wearing sunscreen and taking retinol in the evenings, putting it on your skin so, you're kind of like snatched. I mean, that's the goals, fingers crossed. But in your 40s, the life goals that you're probably going to have might be things like renovating the current home that you have because it might, have started to feel a little bit outdated, or you might even be looking to find a bigger home to accommodate for some of the changes in your lifestyle. Maybe your children are getting older. If you have children, maybe your pets require a single story level house because they're getting older and they can't go up and down the stairs. And that's clearly a normal reason to change houses. You might also be thinking a little bit more about your career. At this point, you've been in the workforce for 10, 15, 20 years. And so you kind of understand the game. You've figured out exactly where you're heading in terms of at least how strong or how intensely you want to go up the corporate ladder or starting a business. You might also completely decide to shift and start something completely different. I mean, Vera Wang started her company in her 40s, I think, when she was denied becoming Vogue's editor. She was like, that's fine. I'm going to start Vera Wang. And you're also going to be able to start thinking about, if you have children, college education costs, or if you have an eye on early retirement. We start calling people in their 40s the sandwich generation, or the kind of sandwich group, because not only are you taking care of people below you, your children, your dependents, nieces and nephews, you're also going to have to start thinking about your parents, the generation above you, because they're going to be in their 60s and 70s. And, it's really scary. Some of our parents are a bit older, so they might even be in their 80s and 90s, and you have to start thinking about their care and what does that look like while they are still young, semi-young and healthy, but starting to get older, starting to possibly need surgeries, needing care. A lot of my childhood, it's very interesting how different people grow up, but in my childhood, my grandparents lived with us. We had like a multi-generation household. So a lot of times it was kind of expected of us to take our grandparents to the doctors or the hospital, or get them for elective surgeries, or get them checked up. And it was very normal, but it's just, an extra thing to think about in terms of finances, in terms of time. And so your 40s start to get a little bit more complicated with all these different moving parts and all these different ideas of what's going on. But hopefully by the time you're in your 40s, your income will have increased definitely since your 20s. You'll have a lot more confidence. You'll be able to, ask for what you're worth. And so the savings goal in your 40s, bear with me, should be 3 times your annual salary. 3 times your annual salary should be saved or invested. So if you are making $50,000 in your 40s, you should have $150,000 saved or invested. Retirement accounts are included in this, but that is the idea. And remember, you might be thinking, Sim, this is a lot. Like, how does this work? Why this number? And remember, this is all to make sure that you are in the complete best possible place to be set up so that when you turn 67, you have 10 times your salary. But to do that, to have that, to retire comfortably with that, these are the benchmarks that you need to be ticking off. So if you make $100,000 a year, you need to have $300,000 saved or invested. And if you started investing in your 20s or 30s, or even now in your 40s, the earlier you start, the less you have to put in to grow this investment account. But it doesn't mean it's too late. It doesn't mean if you're listening and going, oh my God, I'm like definitely not there yet. This is the time to learn. This is the time to figure it out. And it just means finding that way to increase your income, to invest more money into your retirement account and build up that nest egg, because future you is going to be so thankful. And the average balance saved and invested of someone in their 40s is $71,000. So 40s sounds a little bit scary. Things are getting a little bit more serious. You might kind of feel like you're starting to begin your midlife crisis. So the best money saving tool in your 40s is to not buy a fast car, to not buy a motorbike. I feel like it's the fast car, but I don't know what like our generation is going to do. And I definitely don't know what Gen Z is going to do, but I'm very excited to see what happens. Now, we're going to move over to our 50s. And our 50s, we're feeling pretty comfortable. We're feeling in our skin. We might suddenly start wearing like fur coats and calling everyone dear. I personally really look forward to my 50s. 50s is not that old though. My parents are in their 50s, and in my head, they're still like 37. And so you're still active. You're still young enough. You're still figuring things out, and you might even have adult children at this stage. And at this point, you need to have saved or invested 6 times your income. Also, on average, someone in their 50s has around $80,000 saved up or invested. In your 50s, if everything has gone to plan, you might be getting close to paying off your home. You might even start looking at purchasing more property like a batch or a holiday home if you are, fortunate to do so. But funnily enough, or maybe more like sadly, a lot of cautiousness starts to grow amongst people in their 50s. A lot of people in their 50s, when it comes to thinking about retirement, that ends up being the main focus. Like when you're in your 20s, retirement is like something you do later down the track. It's like, oh, your retirement, I'll do that later. Like I can retire, but I'm only 23 years old once. Like I'm going to go to Paris. So I could retire, but like I love this like new perfume. I'm obsessed with perfume right now. And like I'm going to buy it. And so when it's so far away, it's just hard to even like imagine it or picture it or think like, is this valuable? Is this something I need to do? And so in your 50s, it is a little bit scary because now you've got like a decade and a bit left to retirement. And the people that have made good financial decisions in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and good health decisions in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, you're starting to see that group separate from the group that maybe were not looking after their health or their finances. And this obviously needs to be caveated with the fact that some people just have had really hard lives and they have bad luck, and it is not necessarily their fault that they are in their 50s and they have found themselves maybe not in the financial position that they thought that they would be in. And I have to say, this is the time when living in a country where you have support, social security, government support, these things really help and really matter. And countries like the UK and Australia, New Zealand, and Canada actually do a pretty decent, not perfect, but decent job at offering like, hey, if you have sickness issues and can no longer work, here is a sickness benefit. If you have lost your job in your 50s and you're facing like ageism in the workforce and it's harder for you to get a job, here's like a working benefit or an allowance. And so there are support systems available, but I just want to bring that in because as I have seen in my own experience, there are many people that do the right thing, are good savers, put money away, but sometimes life happens. And again, these numbers are things to hope that you can kind of have settle down and hope that you've kind of got done. But it's okay if you do not have 6 times your income saved up. Sometimes, even if that is just equity in the home that you've slowly paid off, or that's your retirement fund, or even if you've only got half of it, it is a good place to start. Then comes your 60s. And I have to say, like a touch wood, but when I reach my 60s, I just don't know how I'm going to feel. Like, I don't think 40s is old. I don't think 30s is old. I don't even think 50s is old. But I think once you hit 60s, you just can't deny it at that point. Like, that is elderly. I've started actually following some accounts where they're like women in their 60s and 70s that do fitness, like that they're like quite fit and they have like toned arms and they go to the gym and they lift weights. And I'm like, this is what I hope. I don't do it now in my 20s, but like, God, I hope I do it in my 60s. And so when you get to your 60s, you want at this point to have 8% of your annual income saved up or invested. Then by the time you are 67, you want to be able to have 10 times your income saved up or invested. And that sounds quite high and it sounds like a lot, but remember, over the decades, we've slowly been building this up. We've been building up 1 times our income, 3 times our income, 4 times our income, 5 times our income. Like, we build this up slowly so that by the time you hit 67, you have 10 times your income saved up and invested. And that's going to help you be able to draw down money and retire and have a more comfortable life where you do have a roof over your head, where you're not going to the supermarket and just buying baked beans and bread and like having that every night, because I have seen it and it is so heartbreaking when you see people that are further along that, you know, life hasn't been too kind to them. So beating the averages is actually something that can be done. It may be easier than you think. If you're listening to this and going, Sim, I understand these benchmarks, but it's scary. I just don't know where to begin. I don't know how to get started. Here are some quick tips that are going to make it a lot more easier. The first thing is, surprise, surprise, setting up some goals. If you have the goals that we have spoken about now, then you are going to be able to know that, hey, in my 30s, I need to have 1 times my annual income saved. In my 40s, I need to have 3 times my annual income saved. In my 50s, I need to have about 6 times saved. And in my 60s, I need to have 8 times saved. So have these goals. Then by having these goals, you can work backwards. Okay, how much do I need to save every single week to put some money aside and invest it? And assuming an annual rate of around 6, 7, 8%, how much will that money grow over time? It's also important to separate your savings and your everyday spending into different bank accounts, even if it's in the same like account app, just because that way you're not pulling out money for future you that could be used in retirement. You're using whatever you have now, and then you don't feel guilty because you go, well, this $50, like I can do whatever I want with it. I can spend this money. This is not for my future self. Like, I will not be eating beans on toast for the rest of my life. I could spend this $50. And the third thing that you want to do, which is weirdly such a game changer, like the amount that this helps compared to how hard it is to do, because it's very simple to do, is to set up reoccurring payments. If you find out that you only have $5,000 saved or $10,000 saved, and your goal is to have $30,000 saved by, the next 2 years, work backwards and figure out, well, then to get that amount, how much do I need to put away every single week or invest every single month? And then you're going to have that set up reoccurringly from your bank account, where every single month, $100 or $300 or $500 gets taken, it gets invested into a broad market index fund or saved in a high yield savings account, and you are putting this money away for future you. I know it can seem scary. I know it can seem overwhelming, but I promise you that the fact that you're even watching this or listening to this means that you are ready to take your retirement seriously, and you will do so much better than if you had just decided to bury your head in the sand, because it's very easy to do that. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode. And with that, please leave a review, leave a comment on YouTube, let me know how you found it, send it to someone that you think it would benefit. And with that, I'll see you next week.